So based off of what you guys can see, can anyone guess like what topic I'm going to talk about?
Smoking the weed.
Exactly. Right, so yeah, I'm going to be talking about marijuana, and these are just some of the terms of like the street names for marijuana. So some of the common ones are weed, dope, pot, and Mary Jane. Some of the less common ones, for me at least, is gangster, reefer, ganja, and then my personal favorite, big giggles. Alright, so the three main points I'm going to be talking about today is the history of marijuana, of how it came to America. Next is why it became illegal, and the effects of marijuana use. So starting off with history, it was brought by the Spanish to the New World in 1545, but then it wasn't introduced until 1611 by the English settlers in Jamestown. And up until 1920s, everyone used it medically, not recreationally, so there is a difference there. And the people who used it is mostly by jazz musicians, Mexicans, blacks, and hippies. And it wasn't until the 1930s that it was criminalized. And why it was criminalized all started with this man right here, Harry Anslinger. So he was the first commissioner of Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which is today is the DEA, which stands for Drug Enforcement Administration. He basically fed lies to the public saying that, oh, marijuana makes blacks and Mexicans thirst for white blood, or makes white women attracted to black men. So by associating marijuana with violence and racism, he created these propaganda, and which eventually led to the passing of the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, which outlawed the possession and the selling of marijuana. And a couple of years later, into the 1940s, scientists actually proved that marijuana didn't cause any of the things that Anslinger claimed. And so in 1973, I don't know why it took so long, but it was recommended that President Nixon decriminalize it, but he refused. As to why he didn't refuse, it can be answered by his policy advisor, John Ehrlichman. He said, and I quote, "We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or blacks, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did." So to me, upon researching it, I found it was really shocking to me, because I didn't know that this was the reason why they criminalized marijuana. They just, basically they kept it criminalized for their own personal use. And yes. And then my next point is the effects of marijuana use, specifically recreational use. So there are two types of high when smoking marijuana. There's the good high and the bad high. Everyone tends to avoid that one. So for the good high, there's relaxation, laughter, and munchies. Sometimes it's one or the other. Sometimes it's a combination of the three. It really all depends. And then the bad high is anxiety, fear, and panic. And according to National Institute on Drug Abuse, whether you get a good high or a bad high depends on your tolerance and the THC level of the marijuana. Because there's a lot of different kinds of marijuanas out there. Some are stronger than others, and then they can affect you in different ways too. And so basically, to sum it all up, no one really cared about marijuana up until the 1930s when it was criminalized, because by associating it with racism, violence, it kind of created a stigma against it. And it's important to know the effect that using marijuana could do. Even though I didn't talk about the medical effect of it, it's still important to know. And so, in the words of the Marvel supervillain Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, He says, being informed, knowing facts as they are, and not how we wish to perceive them, can tip the balance between life and death. Thank you.
I really like how you wait, which one?
Oh, you. I go. You be red.